Hi, it's me. Now, historically, the lens manufacturer with the boldest reputation for crazy, ambitious designs has to be Sigma, and today they are embracing that status more strongly than ever with this new, record-breaking f1.4 fisheye lens, the 15mm f1.4 DG DN Art. Currently for L-mount and Sony E-mount cameras, full frame or aps-c. So, to go along with the deliberately distorted, attention-grabbing fisheye distortion pattern with a gapingly wide 180-degree diagonal view, you're also getting an amazingly bright aperture, making it ideal for shooting indoors or even for astrophotography. In fact, I imagine this is one of the key uses the designers had in mind for this thing. At f1.4, it can even offer you noticeably out-of-focus backgrounds for more creative work. Now that's unique on a fisheye lens. You have to get pretty close to your subject for that though. It also has the honour of being the first native autofocus fisheye lens on the Sony E-mount system, I think anyway, after 10 years of its existence, which is quite astonishing when you think about it, although of course you could have adapted older lenses. An aperture as bright as that, though, does come with a cost. This thing is set to cost an eye-watering £1,859, or probably around $2,000 US, making it firmly out of my financial reach anyway. Sigma are really taking a gamble on this thing selling at that kind of price. But then again, it's somewhat understandable. The giant, uniquely shaped glass elements that it requires, and the other low economies of scale for such a big and specialist lens were always going to push up the cost. Anyway, I'd like to thank Sigma UK for loaning me this lens for a week for testing, although as usual, this is a totally independent review. When it comes to build quality, the first thing you notice is its big size and weight, as this thing weighs in at a hefty 1.36 kilograms, about 3 pounds. Carrying it around with you is no joke, and it's a very attention-grabbing lens. Also, definitely not something you can keep discreet. It's certainly the first fisheye lens I know to come with its own adjustable tripod mount. But the build quality of everything is absolutely excellent. The lens feels as solid as a rock. The lens's metallic mount features weather sealing and a space for rear gel filters, as you might be able to see there. In front of that, we get a fairly large aperture ring. It can be set to turn smoothly or to click, satisfying both stills shooters and video makers, and it can also be locked in and out of automatic mode, which are all controls that I love to see. There are a number of focus controls on the side of the lens, including manual focus lock, which can be helpful for doing astrophotography in the dark. The manual focus ring itself is rubberized and turns very smoothly. It works very responsively to being turned, as you can see here. You might also notice some slight focus breathing, but that doesn't really matter at all on such an incredibly wide-angle optic. The lens's autofocus motor is silent, accurate, and fast enough in single shot mode. Switch over to autofocus continuous mode, and the autofocus becomes lightning fast, so it shouldn't have any trouble tracking any subject. Not the most important thing on a fisheye lens, but having decent autofocus certainly speeds up your shooting experience. The lens's front cap is particularly interesting. It clicks into place very positively and securely. However, Sigma have also built into it a couple of holders that click open and shut for any gel filters you might be using in a holder in the rear mount of the lens. What an interesting idea, although Sigma recommend that you don't keep your gel filters in the cap for long periods of time. Whether you get any use out of that hidden feature, I don't know, but it's an interesting one for sure. The lens also comes with one of Sigma's excellent carry bags, but it is not image stabilized. Overall, well, this is exactly what a lens that costs this kind of money should be like. Its build quality is absolutely excellent, although some might be put off a little by its sheer size and weight. Okay, more importantly, let's look at image quality. I'll be testing it today on my Sony a7R III with its 42 megapixel full frame sensor. In-camera corrections are turned on. The lens's fisheye design means I'm looking at a landscape shot today for a change. At f1.4, the lens is razor sharp in the middle with excellent contrast. Over in the corners, the image is slightly softer but still really impressive, nice and punchy. At f2, sharpness is about the same, but the corners are brighter. Stop down to f2.8 or f4 though, and sharpness becomes as perfect in the corners as it was in the middle. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, although stop down as far as f16 and diffraction begins to cause noticeable softness. Still, this is a great performance, very sharp, straight from f1.4 with excellent contrast, although stopping down to f2.8 will reduce vignetting and offer a little extra corner sharpness. This lens can focus as closely as 38 cm to your subject. That might not sound very good for such a wide angle optic, but it's much closer than you might think when you bear in mind that this big lens is almost 16 cm long. At f1.4, the bad news is that close-up image quality is very ghostly. There's a big improvement at f2, and at f2.8, close-up image quality is very sharp again. Let's see how the lens performs against bright lights. A small amount of flaring is visible here, hardly surprising considering the lens's gigantic glass elements, but it's clearly being controlled well. While we're working in the dark, let's, as usual, take a look at coma and sun stars. At f1.4, bright points of light in the image corners show virtually no smearing at all. Excellent. Let's zoom out and look for sun stars. They begin to emerge at f5.6 and become quite strong at f11 and especially strong at f16. Very nice to see. For anyone interested, here's the night shot that I showed you earlier. Do you want to look more closely? These are the corners at f1.4. Just magnificent. Just look at the glory of God's creation. I wonder how many thousands of stars there are just in this tiny patch of the night sky, let alone in the band of the Milky Way. It's unfathomable, and the Sigma lens is having no problems capturing them. And finally, bokeh. Mostly, this lens's bokeh is beautifully smooth when you're close enough to your subject to catch it. Lovely. One thing I noticed though is that specular highlights at f1.4 can have an unusual shape to them. It's the classic cat's eye shape, which looks quite interesting on a fisheye lens. Those highlights also seem to have a slight light fall off towards their inner edges. It's a matter of personal preference whether you like that or not, but it's only subtle. Overall, the Sigma 15mm f1.4 fisheye is not only a very high quality optic, but it's also uniquely exciting and very creative to use. I can honestly tell you that I had a blast testing this thing out, and it'll be of particular interest to astrophotographers. It's certainly an eye-wateringly expensive tool to have in your belt though, especially for a lens that you might not really end up using very often. Then again, a lens this unique and difficult to manufacture was always going to cost a lot of money. Sigma are a business after all, not a charity. I reckon it might end up being one of those lenses that develops a cult following before very long, so despite its high price, I can certainly still recommend it. Gah, you know, I secretly love it when such a crazy lens arrives in my test lab. Every company should take a risk once in a while and do something different, I think. You only live once. Well, thanks for watching, and a huge thanks to my supporters over on Patreon, who continue to make such a big difference to me keeping this channel going sponsorship free. Check it out in the description below. Patreon supporters get all kinds of exclusive bonus content and early access to a lot of my reviews. Ciao for now, everyone.